You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there are these things that makes it official. Welcome to 16 years, 2,300 plus episodes of the Chris Voss Show. As always, we bring you the Chris Voss Show with all the smartest people, all the billionaires, the White House President's Advisors, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the professors, all the smart people who write these amazing books to tell you how to live your life better. And damn it, if you guys aren't living your life better, then don't make me stop the car and come back there. Be sure to watch episodes we have. Go back and just keep listening until you get it. So, because at this point, you should be like the smartest person on the planet if you listen to the Chris Voss Show. I don't know why I'm not, but I did play with a lot of lead paint chips when I was a kid. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Anyway, guys, we have an amazing young lady on the show. We're talking about her new book. It is called, and I'm not kidding about the paint chips, her book is called The Force Continuum, How to Shift Your Mindset to Transform Your Life. Wendi Zimmer joins us on the show today. We're going to be talking to her about her insights and everything else. And I believe we should be addressing you as doctor. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Or you can just call me Wendi. It does not matter.
All right. Sounds good. Does this look infected to you? No, this is a doctor joke I always
Wrong kind of doctor, Chris. Wrong.
All right. Turn it. I'm screwed then. It is green and pussy, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, we'll get into it with her. We're going to find out her insights and everything else. She is a PhD, a best-selling author, expert in mindset development, professor at Texas A&M University, great ribs, and down there, and an education consultant. As an educator for 20 years, she's used her research and experience to help thousands of people take power over their mindsets and use easy to implement strategies to make this relatively abstract concept of mindset development actionable. Welcome to the show, Wendi. How are you?
Thank you, Chris. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am wonderful. It's glad to have you. Give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Perfect. So go to my website, wendizimmer.com, WENDI. My mother liked unique spellings. So just wendizimmer.com, and you can find out more about me and what I do.
So give us an overview of what's inside your new book.
Perfect. No, absolutely, Chris. This book definitely is a combination of my life experience and then work that I do with my students and my clients. Overall, my mission in life is to help people increase the belief they have in themselves. Show up differently for themselves, show up differently for those around them. We spend so much time in our lives helping others and investing in others, and we often neglect our own selves. And so I've created a system for teaching people how to believe in themselves, and that's what's in my book.
Do you find that's a lot of people in society are suffering that? They don't really believe in themselves. They kind of have self-limiting concepts and belief systems?
Yes, absolutely. Honestly, the latest data shows that 1 in 4 people worldwide have low mental well-being. And that stems from largely a lack of self-belief. Because too often we don't feel that we're good enough or smart enough or strong enough or pick a thing, right? And so when that happens, we think negatively about ourselves. And as we increase those negative thoughts, we start to believe them because the negative is easier to believe. So it's becoming a worldwide epidemic, and we've got to figure out a solution.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have had issues. It kind of reminds me of that Stuart Smalley daily affirmations thing. You're good enough, smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. That's what I do. I stand in front of the mirror all day long and just
Perfect.
talk to
Does it
myself.
work?
I don't know. My therapist says it's going to be a while. And maybe a lobotomy is in my future, I think, or a straitjacket. One of the two. Yeah. They let me out of the straitjacket long enough to do the show every day. So that's kind of nice. That's nice.
But obviously, you have some self-belief, Chris, or you would not be doing what you do. So maybe speaking up to your mirror every morning is doing more than you think.
I don't know. It could just be rampant narcissism, though, too.
Good.
I think like people give a shit about anything I think about. I seem to have that issue. But no, you talk about in the book how in this information age we're inundated with videos, those darn podcasts. I'm reading your Amazon websites, social media posts, many other sources of information that give us strategies to achieve what we want. And it's kind of information overload, a lot of the stuff that we get, right?
Yes, it is. And that's the problem is we've been taught from a young age, or at least I have, and many people I work with are similar, that we need to believe in ourselves, that we need to feel like we're good enough, and we need to have confidence, and we need to make sure that we, stand up for what we believe in. But the problem is that people are very quick to tell us why we should believe in ourselves, and they're very quick to tell us what we should believe about ourselves. But too often, nobody tells us how.
Yeah.
So as we're, like perfect word, you said inundated, as we are constantly inundated with new information, I like to use the analogy of a locked cabinet. We take all that information and we put it into the cabinet for one day when we're good enough or strong enough, or we feel that we're going to be the type of person who can then use all those resources. We lock them away for that day when it comes. But the problem is when never comes. We use that as a massive lie, and nobody helps us unlock that cabinet to then use all those resources. So we store them away for a day that we want to be good enough. Where in all actuality, we are exactly who we need to be right now. And as we start investing in ourselves and start increasing our self-belief, then we can use all those resources. We can use social media for good. We can use books and podcasts and all that information that we need. But until we believe in ourselves, we're never going to apply that information. It's just going to become noise that makes us feel even more like we're not measuring up to some arbitrary guideline that's been set for us.
And you're right. Some people do that thing where I'll be happy when I make a bunch of money, I'll be happy, or I'll be a better person, or I'll fix maybe some of my issues, trauma, et cetera, et cetera. I'll do that later. We do a lot of that in time delay. I'll play with my kids more, but in the meantime, I've got to do a lot of work right now, and I'll just ignore them, I guess, for a while. And then, what's that old song about the cats in the cradle and the silver spoon? That song that talks about the dad is always putting the son off. I'll play with you later, son. I'm busy right now. And then comes the time where the son's too busy for the father. And it's kind of how life works. Sometimes we spend a lot of time with our head down thinking we're doing something that makes progress, and maybe we're missing stuff. Do you get into your book? It sounds like some of this is a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like some people have that. It's really bad in their belief systems.
Yes. I actually talk about imposter syndrome in my book. In fact, we've got to reframe what we think about imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome is, again, another lie. Now, imposter syndrome is not a lie, but the whole belief behind it is a lie that we tell ourselves, because in all actuality, you're only an imposter when you don't belong there.
Yeah.
But so often, we are not supposed to know everything right now. We're not supposed to have all the resources and all the support. Thank goodness. Let's be real for a second. Thank goodness. And so anytime that you're a student, you can't be an imposter. That goes against the definition of student. We should always be students. We should be lifelong learners working to be the best version of ourselves for us and for others. And so if that's true, then we can't be imposters. Now, that doesn't mean we can't feel like imposters. So as we increase our self-belief and as we figure out who we are and who we want to be, we can help ourselves feel less like imposters. But at its core, we are not imposters. We are just students that are learning and growing and working to invest in ourselves to be the best version we can be. And so when we reframe our mindset around that, it's easier for us to give ourselves grace, and it's easier for us to recognize that we're not supposed to be this perfect version of ourselves. We are a work in progress, and thank goodness, because how boring would life be if this is as far as I was ever going to get, if there was no way for me to grow and be better and stronger than I am now.
Yeah. And is that maybe why people feel they're not good enough at the time, is because they're in that transition?
Quite possibly. I mean, there's a lot of variables. Transition's part of it. Not taking the time to really reflect on who we are and who we want to be. I often feel sometimes that, especially in various points of our lives, we are truly just surviving. Day to day, surviving. It's like, I made it through today. We live a day at a time. And there's nothing wrong with that for short periods of time. But when we allow that every day over and over and over again, and we don't actually stop to think about, in my book, I ask specific questions about, what do I believe about myself? What do I want to believe? Who do I want to see myself as? How do I want people to see me? How do I want to be seen through the lens of, A, B, or C pick? So I ask my audience specific questions to make you pause for a second and stop and think about, what does this look like for you? Because for each of us, it's a very personal system, personal plan. And we're not going to follow some, the plan that's right for you, Chris, is very different than the plan that's correct for me. And so taking time to just really reflect on where you are and where you want to be is not often a luxury that we give ourselves. And so that's one of the things I love about this book. When I set out, I joke that it's a choose your own adventure book, because you can kind of pick and for those of us, Chris, you may be younger than me, but for those of us that grew up like late 80s, early 90s reading those books, but because we are all in different places, and what I need today may be different than what you need today, and it might be different than what both of us need tomorrow. And so giving us time to really digest that, and permission, and we don't often allow ourselves the time to do that.
Is permission a big part of that? Allowing ourselves to be okay with ourselves, maybe?
Absolutely. We spend so much of our time, from when we were little, asking for permission. Permission to anything, right? Permission to go to the bathroom if you're in school. Permission to, I was an elementary school teacher for years, Chris, so that's where I go back to permission.
That's where it comes from.
It's all, the history's coming back. But permission to stand up for myself, permission to, be who I want to be. And because we're afraid that we're going to go against some norm that people have created for us. And so often we're scared and we think, I have to have permission to be this person or do this thing, where in all actuality, that's just an old lie that comes from years of experience. As adults, we don't need permission anymore. We just think we do. And it can often be an excuse. So we've got to be careful and not let it be.
Some people are just using an excuse not to have to grow, maybe not have to change.
Absolutely. And that's okay too, if that's where you are at the moment. But is that really where you want to stay? Most people do not.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to. I mean, I have seen a lot of people do that. They do that with starting a business or growth, or I'll get to that eventually. And they never do. And you'll be like, hey, you're still working on that thing years from now that you're going to work on, and I think you're right. We do get caught up in the day to day. You get caught trying to make a living instead of designing a life. And a lot of people, they're like, I'll worry about that. I remember I sat down with my business partner in, was it 92? And we both had corporate jobs, and we had this opportunity to create our first company that we turned into a multi-million-dollar company over, I don't know, what was it, 13, 14, 15 years it lasted. And it built a whole empire of companies for us from there. And I remember sitting down with them, and I said, we can play the corporate game, and we can spend the next 20 years, you and I, moving up the corporate ladder, and maybe if we get lucky, we'll get high enough to get a golden parachute out, or some sort of nut that we can have to start our own company. But I got to tell you, I don't think I'm going to feel, at 50 or 60 years old, I don't think I'm going to feel like starting a company and working 18 hours a day like we plan on doing here. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, so if we do this now, we've got the ability to do it now, and we should just go for it. He's like, yep, let's do it. And that's how we launched, and it changed my life and changed his life as well. So, we both, maybe the time isn't perfect for this, and boy, they're right. There's no way I can work 18 hours a day at 57. It's not going to happen. So you talk about mindset. How do you, this is a word that gets kicked around a lot. How do you define mindset?
That's a great question, Chris. So I define mindset as the actions and attitudes that help us believe in ourselves. Because too often I think we perceive or we define mindset as passive. It's, it's my thoughts and it's my feelings, but none of that really matters without the action. And so if we reframe around action, I mean, the example you gave just a second ago with you and your business partner is perfect. Because we can sit here all day long and think, should I do it? Should I not do it? I think it's a good idea. But if we don't actually act on it, nothing happens. You would have still been in the same situation a decade later, because it would still have been a good idea. And you both would have been like, we should do this. But it never happens. And so that action piece is one that we've got to take that step. They've actually done a lot of research lately. And I don't know if you've heard, Chris, something that's called the 5-second gap or the 5-second hesitation. And it's essentially, they've started doing research on highly successful people. And they're like, okay, how do highly successful people think differently? The thing is that they don't really think differently in the moment. They think differently from the get-go, because they decide, I'm going to do it even when I don't want to. Because that moment that we go, okay, I should do something, there's a 5-second hesitation between that moment we decide and when we actually do something. And in that 5 seconds is when feeling gets involved. So if we don't feel like doing it, like in the morning, your alarm goes off and you're like, should I get up? If you don't feel like doing it, you don't. You hit the snooze, you roll back over. Yeah. But in that 5-second gap, if you feel like doing it, then you get up. Where highly successful people don't let feelings get involved. They're like, the minute I decide to do it, I've already decided, I'm getting up, I'm doing the thing, I'm making the decision. They don't allow that 5-second gap to stop them from taking action. And that's the big difference. That action truly can change your life, How many of us have looked at something and been like, oh, I can't believe somebody invented that. I had that idea 15 years ago. Why didn't I do it? Well, you didn't do anything, but somebody else did. And that's the big difference, that action piece. We've got to see mindset less as our thoughts and feelings and more as the action that we take.
Because if you sit and you think about your feelings about it and you kind of meander about through that whole process, it can be hard to, make a logical decision. You can kind of go feel and think about it a little bit more. And you're right. People take action. Like the same thing I talked about with my companies, launching my companies. Like we just kind of did it like 100 miles an hour. And a year and a half later, we started a second company just on a whim and 100 miles an hour. And we didn't really think about it. We thought about it a little bit, but we just kind of went, nope, get her done. And we did it. And, I look back on my life at these moments that I decided to make a decision and roll with it, even though we maybe weren't perfectly ready or perfectly prepared. That's another mistake a lot of people make. They're like, I'll do it when I'm ready. And and so, yeah, I look back on those moments and I'm like, whatever that moment was where I finally made the decision to push the button, I'm just like, thank God I did that. Yeah. What if I had gone into my emotion, and what if I had been like, I'll do it tomorrow? And there's a lot of stuff, that I've done like that over time. And yeah, and I think about how different my life would be, because those moments where I made that decision and activated, that changed my life. And, the difference that it made, et cetera, et cetera.
And Chris, it's amazing, because if you think about, you did exactly what so many people don't do, because they think, oh, well, I'm not ready. I don't have all the things I need. I don't have all the knowledge and all the skills, and you never will be. Mm-hmm. But you were ready and had everything you need to take that first step. And that's where people have got to change their mindset around, you're never going to be completely ready. Think of the things you learned just with this podcast, Chris. You've been doing it how many episodes now? What did you
2,300 plus.
See, that's insane. Day one, your first podcast probably looked nothing like this one today. Oh, no. But you're like, I have to take one step. And you learn along the way, and you get better and you grow. Because had you known what it was going to look like this many episodes later, you probably would not have even gotten started, because it would have been too scary to even imagine. But this podcast, I would venture to say, has probably changed your life.
Definitely, yeah.
So just taking that first step, quit worrying about the end result, because you have no idea what that's going to look like anyway. Take that first step, take a risk, have it be successful, increase the belief you have in yourself, and then you'll take more risk. And it's those little tiny baby steps. And that's where I think so often we get in our own way, because we're like, oh, I can't be a successful podcast host. What is wrong with you? no, today maybe not, but today you can take one step toward being that person you want to be. And that's, a mindset shift that we all need to do.
The one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur in life is you just have to go get in it. One of my friends, Billy Cox, he's a speaker and book writer. He's written multiple books. He has this analogy of get in the game. That's his kind of keywords there. And so he tells people, look, you've got to just get in the game. You've got to get into play. And as an entrepreneur, and even in life, you've got to you're really just doing fixing. So a lot of it is just problem solving. So you're adapting, problem solving, learning. And it's just like a book or anything else, any other skill you want to master. You just have to get in and start doing it. And you're going to fall. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to muck it up, but you're never going to get to where you want to go until you take that first step and you just get in the game, as it were.
Absolutely. I tell my students all the time, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. but you've got to think of it like, I can either continue forward or I can quit. They both hurt. They both are difficult. They both are emotionally and painful, but they're both a choice. So I can continue to fight for what I want and strive toward whatever this goal is, or I can quit. I have to decide what choice makes the most sense in my life, because they're both going to hurt. And so, yeah, those scary dreams, Chris, it's what we should all be trying to do every day.
I have a lot of scary dreams, but it's after Taco Bell buffet night. Let's see. On mindset, what are some different ways that you have people apply mindset to what they're doing? Do you use vision boards? Do you et cetera, et cetera? And one of the things you also talk about is identity. I think that's really important, having an identity that you belong or that you deserve it.
So that's a good question. So vision boards are part of it. Honestly, what I use most of the time is just a combination of strategies, because again, as I mentioned before, we're all very different. So there's no formula for this, which is also what makes belief and mindset so difficult. I can't be like, okay, Chris, you're going to do A and B because that's what works for you, and somebody else is going to do B and C. Like, it doesn't work that way. And so in my book, I list just dozens of strategies that people can start implementing quickly in their lives today, because things that might work for me may not work for you, and vice versa. And things that work for me today may not work for me tomorrow. But what I do know from all the people that I've worked with, but also my own life, is I don't have time to do a massive shift, to be like, okay, now I'm going to be a completely different person. And so finding different strategies, and maybe it's vision board, and maybe it's gratitude journal, or maybe it has nothing tangible to it. Maybe it's a different thinking. One of the strategies that I teach people is what I call the have to get to shift, because our brains pay attention to what we tell them to pay attention to. It's part of our RAS, our reticular activating system. And so if we're paying attention to more negative, our brains give us more negative. And we're paying attention to more positive, our brains give us more positive. So too often in our lives, we take normal day-to-day activities and we say, I have to go to the grocery store. I have to go to work tomorrow, where that makes it negative. Where if we say, I get to go to work tomorrow. How many people in this country are unemployed that would love to have a job?
Yeah.
Or I get to go grocery shopping. That means I have money. I have access to food. I have people in my life who I feed. So many different ways for us to frame our lives more positively, because in all actuality, that's a more actual, honest, truthful reflection of what's happening anyway. Because how unfortunate would it be if I no longer could afford groceries? There are many people in this world that can't. And so little strategies like that help shift our mindset, that take very little time, but we develop habits around. And so that is where my coaching and my teaching lie, around those little strategies that we can incorporate easily into our lives, that before you know it, become more natural. But they're literally training our brain to see life situations, and that includes us, differently. And then your question about identity kind of rolls into that as well, of the type of person that we want to be, because that's different for all of us. If I don't want to be a positive person, then that's on me. Now my book's going to give you reasons for why that's not so great for your brain. But my book also has strategies on identity, of figuring out who you want to be, how you want to be seen, how you want others to see you, but also recognizing that that's okay. We are so much more than these arbitrary roles that society has given us. And that's such a cliche thing to say of, oh, I don't want to conform to, but I do mean that of, I had to decide who I want to be, and that may change tomorrow. And so my book also gives strategies around identity of who am I, who do I want to be, and then what does that mean for me as a mom? What does that mean for me as a colleague? What does that mean for me as a sister? And not feeling like I have to be what I think other people expect of me.
Yeah.
It's okay for me to be who I want to be and not hide in the shadow of who I really am. And so that's a big piece of my book as well. Don't
be who other people want you to be, because there's a whole world that will try and take advantage of you and use you. And so you want to be self-actualized. You definitely want to understand. Tell us about some of the service you offer. You mentioned some of your consulting, coaching and stuff. You do speaking on your website. Tell us about some of the offerings you have there.
Absolutely. So I do quite a bit of consulting. I love to go in and work with organizations or individuals and then talk about my book actually goes through 4 pillars. So there's mindset, there's identity, there's habits, and there's energy. And so it's the combination of all 4 of those, because we obviously can't work on every part of our life. You got to start small. But I go in and I do consulting with organizations and individuals and help them figure out exactly who they want to be and why, and how can they show up as the best version of themselves. And so there's obviously a personal aspect to that, but there's a professional aspect as well, because you start getting into, when I believe in myself and I show up differently, then my time management improves. Then my conflict management improves. Then when I think about who I am as a leader, my leadership ability improves. And so there's so many aspects of just believing in yourself that not only help us, but help those around us. And then I love to come in and do keynote speeches or do workshops with groups and individuals, large groups, small groups, anything. Like I think I mentioned at the beginning, my goal, I've been on this great path to help increase my self-belief, because I used to not believe in myself. And I have overcome that to a large degree. I still work on it every day. We all have to. But I want to take what I've learned through my experience and my research, because I publish and I research on mindset and belief, so that other people don't have to go through what I've gone through. And so you can go to my website, wendizimmer.com, and see different offerings and things there. You can also follow me on social media, because I spend a lot of time just trying to give tips and tricks and strategies that we can all implement on our daily lives, because like I said, it's a process. We can't just walk in tomorrow and be like, oh, I have a good mindset now, I never have to think about it again. So it's making it a daily life habit. And I'm just blessed to be able to help people every day.
So give people a final pitch out. Tell them where they can find you on the .coms and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Kind of my final thought. I love, one of the quotes that I live by is Maya Angelou: do the best you can do until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. That's kind of my guidance for today, because believe in yourself the best you can until you get stronger self-belief, and then carry that self-belief and help teach others. And so that's my goal. And I hope everybody today believes in themselves a little bit more because of this talk. You can definitely follow me on Instagram. I'm Wendi K. Zimmer on Instagram. And then on LinkedIn, I'm Wendi Zimmer. And so just find me or go to wendizimmer.com and check that out. I will also say, if you would like a sneak peek of my book, you can text the word FORCE to 33777, and you will get a sneak peek of my book and kind of see some of the strategies in there to see if the book is a good fit for you.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, Wendi.
Thank you, Chris. It's been a joy. I love it.
Thank you. We've learned a lot in how to transform your mindset in your life. Order up the book, folks, wherever fine books are sold. The Force Continuum: How to Shift Your Mindset to Transform Your Life. And who doesn't want that? We all need to be better. I like that better saying. Be the best you can be. Anyway, guys, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. And that should have us out.